we got to get back into talking about Project 2025. I do not have fan art pulled up at this very moment, so there won't be any in this particular video. Apologies about that. I will make sure that it's in the next one. That said, for those who need a primer on what Project 2025 is, it is the mandate for leadership that is being forwarded by the Heritage Foundation. Now, a little bit of history. Heritage Foundation has been one of the biggest conservative think tanks for a long time. They've been around since after the Democrat-Republicans flip. The Heritage Foundation also gave the original 3,000-page mandate for leadership to Ronald Reagan. 2/3 of the policies in that mandate for leadership ended up being put forward between Reagan's era and now. So there is historical precedent for things that the Heritage Foundation puts in these mandates to actually be put into law, be signed into law. Now, since we have started this series, the Republican National Convention has happened, and in that time, one of the main orchestrators behind that convention, behind Project 2025, has actually gone to speak at that convention. That is basically everybody doing speeches, worshiping Trump constantly. So it's been very interesting to me to see Donald Trump saying he doesn't know about Project 2025, especially when Tom Homan, one of the main people in front of Project 2025, well,
the responsibility of the border. I have Tom Homan lined up. We have the greatest people.
You know, Tom Homan. If we go to the actual mandate for leadership itself, we can do a quick search here. Tom Homan. There he is, right there, as one of the main people from the Heritage Foundation itself, writing or contributing his writing to the mandate for leadership. But don't worry, Trump's never read it. He doesn't even know what's in it, according to him. But he's willing to bring on people who have orchestrated this as staff. It's a very interesting thing. Also, apparently there's been leaked audio from Kevin Roberts as well, indicating some other fun bits of info.
And Trump say this, and what you envision as being behind it tactically.
Well, I think it's the sign of a great leader who understands he's in a terrific political news cycle. He's run a really good campaign from start up to this point. And the left's mischaracterization of Project 2025 had become a liability. I think we've seen that really turn around in the last few days since that statement. So no hard feelings from any of us at Project 2025 about the statement, because we understand Trump is the standard bearer and he's making a political, tactical decision there.
So people behind Project 2025 understand. They know that it is a good idea to politically distance yourself from Project 2025 in order to actually enact the things that are in there. That's what they are doing. They understand that. They know that. So anybody trying to do the whole, no, it's Agenda 47 that he's trying to put forward. I wish I could agree with you, but Agenda 47 isn't much better, and Project 2025, even the people behind it are saying, no, we know he's going to distance himself from it. That's the right political move. Jassa says, define good, effective. I can agree. Trump and his team are pretty effective propagandists. Good, like positive, no. But they are good propagandists. That's what they do. They sell something. Also, one of the main things that Project 2025 sets out to do is set the stage to get rid of several people in appointed political positions and swap them out for Trump loyalists. In fact, it's really weird that the latest episode of The Boys that just came out had to begin with a statement saying, just in case anybody had any questions, anything in here that even resembles real life, it's all satire, it's all parody. It's very funny considering I don't want to spoil episode 8 for anybody who hasn't seen it, but there were some very interesting choices in there with grabbing loyalists, I will just say. But also filmed months ago, yes, but Project 2025 was released years ago. Like, I want to say 2 years ago is when it was released. But here is some more fun, haha information where this is concerned. Just, you know.
The key part of Project 2025 that Adam's hitting on, I think, is the most important part for Americans to understand, is this reshaping of the federal government. And I saw the actual executive order at the end of the last administration ready to go that would remake every civil servant into a political appointee and a loyalist to Trump. And it goes beyond Social Security and some of these technical things. It's the national security apparatus. It's our emergency management. It's FEMA. It's responding to natural disasters, pandemics. Those would all be our subject matters. The Dr. Fauci's of the world would be replaced with whatever loyalists he puts into those positions. So it's a very, very scary thing that's actionable and ready to go by Donald Trump.
But don't worry, he's never seen Project 2025. Remember, the main things that Project 2025 wants to do is remove anything involving critical race theory, trans people, gender, any of that. Remove that entirely from any language that the states would use, which would effectively be a legal erasure of these people. Mass deportation of anybody in America who is currently not an American citizen. And on top of that, get rid of every single public office as it currently exists and swap it out for a Trump loyalist who, whether or not they are good at their job, is not really the conversation. The thing that they want is people who are loyal to Donald Trump, people who will kiss the ring. This is one of the reasons I suspect that he actually brought J.D. Vance as his vice president, because J.D. Vance, who has been a very vocal person against Donald Trump, is the exact kind of person who can be held accountable to the MAGA crowd for Trump. Think about everybody who was involved with Trump last time. Of the 44 people that were affiliated with him directly in the White House, only 4 of those chose to endorse him this time. It's very strange that he's not running with Mike Pence again. But the MAGA crowd was literally shouting, "Hang Mike Pence." Mike Pence certified an election that showed that Trump would not be the next president. Therefore, getting somebody who has the little amount of integrity that Pence has, swapping them out for somebody who's willing to kiss the ring for $1 is just a no-brainer move. And if J.D. Vance ever does anything against Trump at any point, then he can bring up the myriad of things J.D. Vance has said about Trump in the negative to basically sick the entire MAGA crowd on him. Anytime that there is a position vacant in a job, maybe it's a good idea to ask why the vacancy is there. Why not have your old vice president pick? Why do you need a different one or a new one? Jassa says, what weakness does Vance cover? Like, Pence got him the evangelical vote that Trump couldn't get. J.D. Vance is just a younger Trump. He is just a younger Trump. I don't think Vance is a pick to cover any particular weaknesses of Trump. I think Vance was a pick solely because Trump knows that he can have Vance in his pocket. He is one of the more vulnerable Republicans to Trump's machinations because of the words he has said against Trump. Now, this can have a backfire effect on the presidency, like on the actual presidential race, but we'll go ahead and see where we end up sitting where that's concerned. It also may be a ploy to get somebody who is anti-Trump as the vice president to try to elicit feelings of calm when people talk about the Trump loyalist thing and go, I don't get loyalists. I didn't hire a loyalist when I got J.D. Vance in. It easily could be that situation as well, but I'm not an expert here. I'm not a political analyst in terms of having any type of training. I don't know if that is necessarily the case, but if I'm going with gut feelings, those would be the reasons that I would pick somebody like a Vance. That said, now that we've gone over some of the more, not breaking, but more reasons why I'm willing to say Project 2025 is a thing that is built for Trump by Trump appointees, let's actually get into Project 2025. This is part 4. If you haven't seen the other parts, then let's go ahead and get into it. You can click on a different video if you need to. If you have not seen the other parts, this is part of a playlist, so YouTube should allow you to get to those other parts easy. A narcissist like Trump would definitely use Vance to manipulate others. Is he? That's another question. Yeah. Hitchmeister says you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone more spineless than Vance, and that's exactly what Trump is looking for. Could be. But let's go ahead and take a look here. More Project 2025. America's bicentennial, which culminated on July 4th, 1976, was a spirited and unifying celebration of our country, its founding, and its ideals. As we approach our nation's 250th anniversary, which will take place during the next presidency, America's now divided between two opposing forces: woke revolutionaries and those who believe in the ideals of the American Revolution. The former believe that America is and has always been systemically racist, and that it is not worth celebrating. It must be fundamentally transformed, largely through a centralized administrative state. So let's go ahead and get one thing out of the way. Are you saying that America, founded on like trying to keep the slave trade running, wasn't it formulated on racism? Like, that isn't part of the foundation? That's really weird. Also, yeah, the founding fathers would have been the woke revolutionaries of their time by comparison to the British monarchy. Just 2 years after the death of the last surviving Constitutional Convention delegate, James Madison, Abraham Lincoln warned that the greatest threat to America would not come from without, but from within. This is evident today. Man, I feel like we've actually read through all of this right now. I think, yeah, we've actually read through all of this. Here we are, White House office. This is where we are, I believe. Says, from popular culture to academia, the American presidency has long been a prominent fixture in the national imagination. Naturally so, since it's the beating heart of our nation's power and prestige. It has played, for instance, a feature role in innumerable movies, television shows, and has been prodded, analyzed, and critiqued by countless books, essays, and studies. But like nearly everything else in life, there is no substitute for first-hand experience, which this manual has compiled from the experience of presidential appointees and provides in accessible form for future use. With respect to the presidency, it is best to begin with our republic's foundational document. The Constitution gives the executive power to the president. It designates him as the commander-in-chief and gives him the responsibility to take care that laws be faithfully executed. It further prescribes that the president might seek assistance of the principal officer in each of the executive departments. Beginning with George Washington, every president has been supported by some form of White House office consisting of direct staff officers as well as cabinet comprised of department and agency heads. Since the inaugural administration of the late 18th century, citizens have chosen to devote their time and their talent to defending or strengthening our nation by serving at the pleasure of the president. Their shared patriotic endeavor has proven to be a noble one, not least because the jobs in what is now known as the White House office are among the most demanding in all of government. Okay, so this entire section is just kind of detailing what each area of the top end of our politics consists of. It doesn't seem to be doing a whole much more than that. The president is briefed on all of his policy priorities by his cabinet and senior staff as directed by the chief. The chief, along with senior WHO staff, maps out the issues and the themes that will be covered daily and weekly. The chief then works blah, 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 blah. This is literally just how government works. This is just how the White House works. So there doesn't seem to be anything here specifically that we need to greatly worry about. Though, for people who have read the document in its entirety, if you see something in this particular section that desperately needs to be addressed, then let me know. But it seems to be that most of the more demandingly stupid rhetoric was at the beginning of the document. Here we go. Frequently, many medium-tier and top-tier jobs have been filled by policy experts tasked with accomplishing much of the work in the administration. At the same time, appointees in the entry-level jobs have brought in valuable energy and commitment to the White House and have proved to be the farm team for the conservative movement. The opposite of the presidential personnel is responsible for identifying... when your doggo goes barking, identifying potential political personnel both actively through recruitment and passing by fielding resumes and adjudicating requests from political actors, vetting potential political personnel by conducting political background checks, making recommendations to the president, identifying programmatic political workforce needs. This is just the stuff that you would need to be viable for the job, as all that seems to be. Yeah, it just reads a tad patriotic history, and that's it. Yeah, this part is just detailing in very, very dry terms what the House or what the White House does. That's it. There's not a whole lot there. Executive Office of the President. I believe this is another area as well where it's going to do it. Let's skip ahead in here and see what we can find. The modern conservative president's task is to limit, control, and direct the executive branch on behalf of the people. The challenge is created and exacerbated by factors like Congress's decades-long tendency to delegate its lawmaking powers to agency bureaucracies, the pervasive notion of expert independence that protects so-called expert authorities from scrutiny, here we go. Here we go. Here's where the document starts belaboring on what it means to be an expert and starts talking about how we don't need expert opinions on things. Let's see here. Saying that experts do not have independence. It protects them from scrutiny, the presumed inability to hold career civil servants accountable for their performance, and the increased reality that many agencies are not only too big and powerful, but increasingly weaponized against the public and a president who is elected by the people and empowered by the Constitution to govern. Okay. So what? Do they not want experts in staff, or do they want public-facing yes men that can be held accountable for loyalty instead of what their actual expertise is in, the fields their expertise is in? The great challenge confronting a conservative president is the existential need for aggressive use of the vast powers of the executive branch. Alpha Mario X, thank you for the 100 bits. Project 64 is still better than Project 2025, and no, don't use V1.6 since there's a security flaw that allows people to use arbitrary code execution in the machine running it. Alpha Mario, I'm pretty sure that, like, we're on 2.1 or 2.4 with Project 64 by this point. Anyways, thank you for the 100 bits. I do appreciate it. Novastar Rin also, thank you very much for resubscribing. Red Joker, thank you for the 101 bits. And I guess a golden Kappa train has started? I forget what this actually is, but apparently people get a golden Kappa emote for contributing to this particular train. So I guess contribute? Yay! That's a cool thing you can do. Alpha Mario says V3.0 is race legal, which I use these days. Then why the point about 1.6? Why was that? I'm so confused. I am so confused. I think you only keep it for 24 hours. We only keep it for 24 hours. Lou Dobbs, conservative pundit, is dead now. Shame. Anywho. Let's see here. The great challenge confronting him is to use the executive branch of power for the American people. Success in meeting that challenge will require a rare combination of boldness and self-denial. Nakibri, thank you for 1,000 bits towards that hype train. Holy shit. And Damasamara, thank you for a 1 community sub, getting us the Golden Kappa train level 1. Let me see what is going on over here. Let's see here. It will require boldness and self-denial. Boldness to bend or break the bureaucracy to the presidential will, and self-denial to use the bureaucratic machine to send power away from Washington and back to America's families, faith communities, local governments, and states. You want to take power away from the government and give it to the churches? Why? Why do you want to do that? Why do you want to take power away from the government and give it to fucking churches? Why is that a thing in this document? What? What powers are you trying to give them? It says, fortunately, a president who's willing to lead will find the executive office of the president the levers necessary to reverse this trend and impose a sound direction for the nation on the federal bureaucracy. The effectiveness of those EOP levers depends on the fundamental premise that is the president's agenda that should matter to the department and agencies that operate under his constitutional authority, and that, as a general matter, it is the president's chosen advisors who have the best sense of the president's aims and intentions, both with respect to the policies he intends to enact and with respect to the interests that must be secured to govern successfully on behalf of the American people. This chapter focuses on key features and recommendations for several of the EOP's important components. Okay, so the big takeaway from that chapter seems to be that we want to strip power away from the government and consolidate it mostly in the president, and then what power isn't sent directly into the president gets diverted to various places like churches for some reason. Skywise, thank you for redeeming your points for an OWL. Espen, thank you for the 500 bits towards that, and Van Briggs, thank you for the hydrate. Okay. Let's see what else is in here. The OMB assists the president in the execution of his policy agenda. It's, again, it's more dirty work on the internals of government. There's nothing really major there. The National Security Council was established by statute to support the president in developing and implementing a national security policy. Cool. Again, this is just detailing all the different jobs in the White House. If you care about their details on that, that is a thing that you can look into yourself at this point. I am waiting until I can find something in here that looks... here we go. The White House Office of Science and Technology was created by the National Science and Technology Policy Organization and Priorities Act of 1976. Before its creation, presidents received their advice and counsel on such matters through advisors and boards that had no statutory authority. The director of OSTP is one of the few Senate-confirmed positions within the executive office. Thank you for the 100 bits, ultra fine point. Within the executive office of the president. Consistent with other laws, the president may delegate to the director of OSTP directive authority over other elements of the executive branch. Other EOP policy officials and organizations, such as the NSC and NEC, are formally only advisory, with agency directives issued by the president. The OSTP's function, as contained in the law, are to advise the president's scientific and technological considerations, evaluate the effectiveness of the federal effort, and generally lead and coordinate the federal government's R&D programs. If science is being manipulated at the agencies to support separate political and institutional agendas, the president should increase the prominence of the OSTP's director either formally or informally. This would elevate the role of science in policy discussions and subsequent outcomes and theoretically help to balance out agencies like the Department of Energy, State, and Commerce, and the Environmental Protection Agency and Council on Environmental Quality. So, wait, if they're wanting to balance out power against the Department of Energy, the Department of Environmental Protection, all of that... That sounds kind of telling. That seems like you, especially with the previous bit talking about trying to curb the political leanings of the Department of Science, wouldn't that mean just taking the Department of Science and getting it more closely politically aligned with Trump, while saying that that is making it less politically aligned with Trump, and then using that specifically so that they can undermine the efficacy of other more specialized departments? Because you would expect that the Council on Environmental Quality, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Departments of Energy, all of these places, I have to pop my back real quick, all of these places would have scientists on staff, just scientists who specialize in each and every one of those fields. And yet, instead of accepting the expertise of those fields, you would then take one broad overarching field and go, no, the Department of Environmental Quality was wrong. Our Department of Science showed that they are wrong. This person who's only been working at the job about 6 months because I appointed him said so. That's what that reads as to me. Maybe I'm incorrect there. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. But I'm willing to actually assume that that's what it is. Again, If you think that I'm incorrect, let me know in the comment section below. But if I were a wannabe dictator, that's probably the route that I would use to take this language and use it to my benefit. Let's see. The OSTP should continue to play a lead role in coordinating federal R&D programs. Recent legislation, especially the CHIPS and Science Act, has expanded federal policy and funding across the enterprise, and there is a need for more significant leadership in this area, both to ensure effectiveness and to avoid duplication of effort. Since one of the main stated goals of Project 2025 is to replace experts in fields with Trump appointees who are Trump loyalists, it feels very, very strange that there would be a part in here about we need more significant leadership in these areas. I feel like I know what they're going to do there. I feel like that's what they're going to do. They're going to end up putting in those loyalists like it said they would do earlier in the document. You can watch parts 1 through 3 if you don't believe that that was there. And then say, we needed to put these people in so that there was a more significant leadership in this area. We needed to ensure effectiveness and to avoid duplication of effort. And so, in order to make things more efficient, we have assigned a new leader in this area. At least again, if I were a wannabe dictator, that's what I would do. During the Trump and Biden administration, there's been a bipartisan focus on prioritizing R&D funding in the so-called industries of the future. Under President Trump, industries of the future were artificial intelligence, quantum informational science and advanced communications, and 5G advanced manufacturing and biotechnology. Under Biden, this list has expanded to include advanced materials, robotics, battery technology, cybersecurity, green products and clean technology, plant genetics, agricultural technologies, nanotechnology, semiconductor and microelectronics technologies. These priorities should be evaluated and narrowed to ensure consistency in the next administration's priorities. So basically, all of that expansion there that is good for the development of the scientific fields, they want to just narrow it to the stuff that they care about personally. That's what that reads as to me. Like, you should be expanding these scientific fields. You should be getting more funding for these scientific fields so that we have more research going into them, so that we have more stuff coming out of them. But no, they want to narrow them for some reason. Okay, that's weird. Council on Environmental Quality has the principal task of administrating the national environmental policy. The president should instruct the CEQ to rewrite its legislations or its regulations implementing NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, along with the historic 2020 effort and restoring its key provisions, such as banning the use of cumulative impact analysis. Well, I'm not actually familiar with what that is, so we can go ahead and take a look here. What is it? When the effects of an action are added to or interact with other effects in particular place within a particular time. It is the combination of those effects and any resulting environmental degradation that should be the focus of cumulative impact analysis. Cumulative impacts are the changes in the environment caused by the combined effects of the projects and other actions, and they should be assessed using methods such as scenarios, thresholds, and models. Wait, this... Do they just want to ban an effective way to ascertain how the fucking environment is doing? What? This just seems like an effective way to measure, like, how the environment is performing, how climate change is going. Because you have to take into account, when you're doing your modeling for these things, every single aspect that is important, right? So, like, what was it when we had aerosols with CFSs? I'm not an expert here, so I'm shooting from the hip, which I don't like to do. But when we discovered CFCs, when we discovered with CFCs that they were actually effectively punching holes in the ozone, we put forward legislation to heavily regulate them and eliminate them for most of our aerosol products. And as a result, after the course of about 10 years of no more CFCs coming and punching holes in the ozone, it turns out that the hole in the ozone started to close up. the models that you use to make sure you understand that stuff like that is happening on a large scale over time will require something like cumulative impact analysis. So banning that seems to be a way to isolate data so that people cannot actually see the big picture of what environmental impacts certain things we do have. At least that's my layman's interpretation of that. That is my layman interpretation of that. Hitchmeister says you'll start looking at stuff like that, and the billionaire capitalist can't just do whatever the hell they want. It's a very bad thing. Yeah. Cumulative impacts, they're viewed as the total combined impacts on the environment of any proposed action. So if we were to try to do something within our federal bureaucracy that would have a super negative impact on the environment, and the Council on Environmental Quality were to find that that was the case, if they had to use cumulative impact analysis to ascertain that the combined impacts of all of the changes that we would be implementing would have a negative impact on the environment here and abroad, they want to ban the ability to figure that out. Yeah, this is oil money in action. This is exactly what this is. This is Exxon money. This is Coke money. This is money that is involved in giant fucking oil firms wanting to make any study that is done, at least any federally funded study that is done into their practices, be so narrow so as to be useless. That's crazy. That's really fucking crazy. Office of National Drug Control. Let's move on to that. Congress created the National Drug Control Policy through the Anti-Drugs Act of 1988 to serve as a coordinative auxiliary for the president on all matters related to drug policy. The next president's top drug policy must be to address the current fentanyl crisis and to reduce the number of overdoses and fatalities. The crisis has resulted in the deaths of more than 100,000 Americans in 2021. Let's see here. Let's fact check them on that real quick. Over 250,000 Americans have died from fentanyl overdose since 2018, so that checks out enough. That checks out enough for me that they're not straight up lying about the fentanyl deaths. The regional analysis is better than small project analysis. Yep. Minute Rice says this is my least favorite type of rhetoric, using actual problems in the world to push their rhetoric. Yep. So the funny thing is, most of the fentanyl that's coming to the United States is coming from China. Like, they produce more of it than anywhere else in the world, as far as I know. And we use fentanyl a lot in modern medicine right now. The problem isn't fentanyl comes to the United States from China. The problem is fentanyl being used to lace up things like cocaine. Because fentanyl is so easily and cheaply produced that it is ridiculously cheap to take, say, a few grams of cocaine and cut it with fentanyl so that a customer still gets a high, but you're spending less money on the actual cocaine itself because it's more expensive to produce, it's more expensive to export. And then you got to make a larger cut of money because you spent less money creating your product, and your customer got more high as a result, which will make them come and pick up more. But because fentanyl is so easy to overdose on when it is not properly controlled, and your average drug dealer on the street is not a proper control for any of these dosages, we end up getting a lot of fentanyl deaths as a result. People who are already on their last line who are going and picking up these drugs in the first place. Now, a lot of conservatives will try to argue that this means we need to continue the war on drugs. We need to do that to get drugs off the street. The thing is, though, what we have found is that getting drugs off the street doesn't actually do a whole lot, because more efficient ways to transport those drugs end up being found, more efficient ways to produce those drugs end up being found. You can't just clean up drugs from the street. It feels like you're doing a whole lot of good when you do one of those drug busts, but it's not actually affecting the net amount of drugs in the world. What it's actually doing is it's making them more valuable. It makes those drugs a far more appetizing prospect for people who don't have a lot of money to begin with. People who desperately need to make $1,000 right now, or they're going to get kicked out of their house. They don't have the ability to get that money anytime soon from any job. Maybe they got laid off from a job recently. So they have to go and engage in selling drugs to make that money. If you want to lower the amount of deaths coming from drugs, you need to lower the amount of stimuli that causes people to engage with them. You need to make sure that there is more available entertainment for people who are young in rural towns. You need to make sure that there is more to do in cities. There are more third places for people to go to and address their mental health concerns. You need to make it so that the economy isn't so dangerously crippling that the only thing people can find solace in is being high. The war on drugs is not solved by fighting drugs. The war on drugs is solved by looking at the actual things that cause people to engage in both the selling and consuming of these things, and recognizing, oh, maybe if we regulate them, maybe if we increase the amount of education that happens, maybe if we recognize that these are a very natural part of our society, that if people used them more responsibly and if we had better regulations for them, then fewer people would get hurt by them. Like, you don't need to have an entire black market around cocaine and other drugs if those drugs are federally regulated and accepted and sold, typically with prescription. You don't need to have the same level of stigmatization about these drugs if you focus more on helping people get off of them as opposed to imprisoning them for engaging in drug use. The ways that we fight drugs are all just asininely stupid. It really is. Alpha says we did that in Canada with cannabis, and we're slowly starting to do it here in the United States with it as well. But, like, if we recognize that alcohol is a very addictive drug and it is a very damaging one for a lot of people, and yet we still found that it was way better to regulate it as opposed to creating a black market that inadvertently made NASCAR, then we can kind of understand why a black market, the way we understand it, exists for every other fucking drug. Hey. Anywho, the next administration must reaffirm a commitment to preventing drug use before it starts, providing treatment that leads to a long-term recovery, reducing the availability of illicit drugs in the United States. You can't affect the availability of drugs in the United States. You can't do that. The harder you put those restrictions, the more lucrative those jobs become. What you need to do is not affect the availability of those drugs. Those drugs will be available to the people who want to get them, no matter what you do. What you need to do is make sure that people do not feel incentivized to go for those drugs. If everything in your life is going honky-dory and you're feeling pretty fucking great, you have fewer reasons to go onto hard drugs. You may just start seeking only small recreational highs, typically socially with friends, as opposed to, I don't know, in a Buc-ee's bathroom, right? That's how you affect that positively, as opposed to this stupid Nixon-esque fight we've been doing forever. The National Drug Control Program agencies represented a total of $41 billion in the fiscal year of 2022, whereas the position for overseeing budget activities was traditionally held by a career official. It is imperative that a political appointee lead the ONDC budget office to ensure coordination between the OMB Program Associate Director and the ONDCT budgetary appointee. Oh, so another call to remove what is typically a career expertise position and replace it with a political appointee. Not an expert, no. Somebody who is beholden to whatever agenda the president has at that time. That's so cool. That's so great. I love this document. It's just full of stupid decisions. I love it. Gender policy. Here's an interesting one let's get into. The president should immediately revoke Executive Order 1420. So what was Executive Order 1420? We have to look up that number to figure out where this one or what this one does. Here's Executive Order 1420. By the authority vested in me as the President by the Constitution of the United States, I hereby order this as follows. Section 1. Advancing gender equity and equality is a matter of human rights, justice, and fairness. It is also a strategic imperative that reduces poverty and promotes economic growth, increases access to education, improves outcomes, advances political stability, and fosters democracy. The full participation of all people, including women and girls, across all aspects of our society is essential to the economic well-being and health security of our nation and the world. It is therefore the policy of my administration to establish and pursue a comprehensive approach to ensure that the federal government is working to advance equal rights and opportunities, regardless of gender and gender identity, in advancing domestic and foreign policy. Oh, this is why Matt Walsh doesn't like female Secret Service people. Oh, they want to get rid of the thing that says that anybody can have any job that they want. Oh, that's not good. That's not good at all. So they want to straight up get rid of man and woman equality? Yeah, that's what it looks like. Including any sub-regulatory guidance documents associated with Executive Order 1420, produced on behalf of or related to the establishment or promotion of the Gender Policy Council and its subsidiary issues. Abolishing the Gender Policy Council, let's go ahead and take a look at what that is specifically so that we are well-informed Americans. Yes, the Gender Policy Council was established by President Biden to advance gender equity and equality in both domestic and foreign policy development and implementation. He's just getting rid of it because that's a Biden thing. That's all that is. Fucking hell. We should eliminate central promotion of abortion. We should eliminate comprehensive sexuality education. We should eliminate new woke gender ideology, which has the principal tenets of gender-affirming care and sex change surgeries on minors. No, they don't. In addition, we should eliminate the council, developing new structures and positions. We should develop new structures and positions that will have the dual effect of demonstrating that promoting life and strengthening the family is a priority while also facilitating more seamless coordination and consistency across the U.S. government. So instead of women being able to have jobs, we should be focusing on the nuclear family where they stay at home barefoot and pregnant. Instead of focusing on actual research on trans issues, we should eliminate everything that gives them any type of human rights. That's what we should be doing. You know, I am now far more confident in the decisions that I made, in the criticisms that I made, in a video that I made that I will not mention. I am far more confident in the position I took looking at more of this goddamn document. Specifically, the president should appoint a position / point of conduct with the rank of special assistant to the president. Yes, another way that we are eliminating areas that have career experts and instead putting Trump appointees in. Or hire coordinate the lead of the president's domestic priorities on issues related to life and the family in cooperation with the Domestic Policy Council. This position would be responsible for facilitating meetings, discussions, agreements, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so get rid of everybody who has any expertise here. Get rid of something that says that gender equality is a good thing as an executive order. Get rid of all of that. Get rid of any concept of gender equality and leave us instead with focusing on the nuclear family because reasons. No actual evidence-based research required. No. Don't have an expert in the forefront. Put a Trump appointee in the forefront. That's what you should be doing. That's what you should be doing. Remember when we mentioned J.D. Vance and how Trump would be able to keep the dirt over his head the entire time earlier in the stream? Office of the Vice President. The vice president is elected to the second highest office in the nation and plays a constitutionally vital role as president in waiting. The vice president is also the president of the Senate and is charged with breaking tie votes in that body. In recent years, the vice president has been granted office space in the West Wing and the Eisenhower Executive Building. The OVP is another one of the levers the president should use to execute his agenda. This is particularly true because there's a significant and unique leverage that the vice president's leadership can evoke to shape policy discussions and outcomes. Every other appointed White House official serves at the pleasure of the president, whereas the vice president is elected, and the process for filling vacancies in that Article 2 constitutional office, which includes confirmation of replacement vice president by a majority of both houses, is governed by the 25th Amendment. Vice President has their own economic advisors. They should fill in their office with strong and sound policy minds. The Vice President is also a statutory member of the National Security Council. In theory, in light of the Vice President is a member of the Smithsonian Institution's Board of Regents. There's nothing to prevent Congress from assigning the Vice President additional statutory duties. In the past, Vice President has been tasked with leading certain initiatives or issues. For example, Mike Pence was tasked with coordinating the federal response to COVID-19, and both Pence and Kamala Harris have chaired the National Space Council. Vice Presidents Cheney and Dane Quayle were active in the deregulatory front in the imposing of regulatory morosia. I'm not actually sure how to pronounce that. However, OVP officials should fully be integrated into each and every process from the start of a new administration and not have to wait to be invited and join various meetings or working on an ad hoc basis. For example, the budget and regulatory review process are linchpins in the executive execution of policy, and the OVP should have a seat at the table through every phase of policy development. Okay. Growlith is doing a Bork again. Moratoria, I believe. Past vice presidents have spent significant time abroad, serving as a state brand ambassador. The vice president, as president of the Senate, often serves as a presidential emissary. They can have a direct role in shaping administration policy. Cool. Then, once again, we have gone from the crazy part of the document back to regular-ass normality. This puts us now on page 102, section 3 of the mandate for leadership. We went through section 1. It was honestly pretty quick. There wasn't a whole lot there. Section 2 seemed to have more of the crazy anti-woke ideology garbage. And this leaves us with section 3, where we are right now. And that's where we're going to have to leave it for the time being, as we are at 48 minutes in this particular episode, and we've covered a lot of ground in Project 2025 so far. Let me know what you guys think of the project section below. Wow, I've spent too much time on the internet. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I'd greatly appreciate y'all's responses and feedback. And for anybody who is willing to do a deeper dive into Project 2025 to maybe assist me with finding particular parts of this that are necessary, please check out my Discord. There is a section in there that my moderator, Dorito Dave, has been heading that is entirely built to be audience supplemental stuff for Project 2025. If there's something you see specifically that I need to keep an eye out on in a following section, then head to my Discord and let Dave know that, hey, you want to help out? How do I do this? What do I do? How can I help read through this massive, massive document? To those of you who have stuck around for every part so far, thank you. It is a massive fustercluck of a thing to look through. And I appreciate every one of you that is dealing with the same miasma that I am here. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you haven't already. And as always, insert end of video tagline here. Hey, I just quickly want to give a thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who keep this show running. YouTube and Twitch are a pretty bumpy ride at the best of times, and the stability a Patreon provides me is worth more than I can say here. I'd also like to thank each and every one of my $20 and up patrons here, and they would be Red Joker, Britzkrieg, Cameron, Dren, Jemshin, Smiling DM, Poundini, Mabbity Babbity, Naomi, Isaac, Agamotto, Jordan, Ravi, Giuni, Kiratorian, Prisma, all of you, I'm not saying that part, and Starlight. And finally, thank you to everyone else that helps keep this channel alive. While you're here, why not check out another video? And thank you for watching.